recorded by Yadubar and Vishaka, as well as the whole interview was recorded with audio. And so it's at the archives. It's in the database. You can read it. So when you read it, it's like really heavy. Prabhupada's getting on, people that are just without knowledge about what our purpose of life is self-realization. So, and the way when I told the story, it seemed like Prabhupada was really heavy, and she was saying, well, do you speak like that? She asked me. I said, she said, do you speak like that, really heavy, about the hogs and the dogs and the camels and the asses? I said, no. I took it as that was meant for me to hear, to build up my faith. That he was really preaching to me, not that I would use those words to people on Sankirtan. That I told her, I said, no, only Prabhupada was pure enough that if he wanted to speak like that, he could and get away with it, but that was, no, she understood, and it was nice that she asked that, because somebody might get them, misinterpret the story to think that they can go out and tell people to their faces that they're simply hogs and dogs.
There was another similar pastime to that where I don't know if it was Kirti Raj that was the chauffeur, but Prabhupada was in the back of the car, and he was with a Bengali gentleman, and he got into a whole debate with them, and they started raising their voices. And then by the time they got to the destination, they were laughing, and it was pretty easy going. And Prabhupada said to Kirti Raj, do not think you can imitate.
Right.
I'm an old man, so I can get away with it. Something like that.
Right. And I mean, a similar thing he said, when he would criticize his god brother, he said, you cannot do like this. He said, I can criticize my god brothers, but you cannot criticize. He said in another type of setting similar to that. Brajendra Nandana made a nice statement here about preaching, about book distribution. When a devotee in the room asked Prabhupada, will you come to Chicago? And Prabhupada responded as if he never really heard the question and asked, are you convinced about the urgent necessity for Krishna consciousness in your life? Only then can you preach. That was a nice story to relate to them. And then in that same conversation there, he said, someone asked him about selling records. Prabhupada responded, don't sell records, sell books. He said, somehow or other, get them to take a book or utter the word Krishna. And then the last thing that Brajendra Nandana remembers in that room was that when someone asked a question and Prabhupada responded, first make them Krishna conscious and then give them the rules and regulations. Don't be so heavy. And then he gives a further purport because Brajendra Nandana was headed up a Gurukula in the 90s. He was the headmaster of one at Gurukula, not sure where. But he said that, I'm sorry, where?
I think it was in Badger, California.
Badger. Very good, right. So he said, our mood with the children was to make it fun and to encourage them to enjoy Krishna consciousness without imposing so many rules and regulations on them. And he said, if we wouldn't follow that instruction, they would become averse to Krishna consciousness. And the result was that we created a very successful school, which I know it was a good school up there.
By making Krishna consciousness fun?
Yeah, don't be so heavy like they were in Dallas at the beginning. They just did it the wrong way. They were not trained at all. So that caused problems. And then Pita said that once he was in the room with all the other Sankirtan devotees, and Prabhupada said, you are all gems. You are 100% engaged in devotional service. You are all brahmacharis, and you are selling my books. Thank you very much. Just do your level-headed best. And then Pita said, I felt great relief when I heard this because I was under a lot of pressure on that party. The devotees pushed us hard and hyped us up to sell Prabhupada's books. But Prabhupada said, just do your level-headed best. And the idea, this is Pita speaking, that the idea of level-headed sunk into me. I thought, this is logical and spiritual. This is the truth. Prabhupada only wants our level-headed best. And one devotee asked Prabhupada, if we die on Sankirtan, will we go back home, back to Godhead? Prabhupada said, whatever state the mind is in at the time of death, that state you will attain. If you think of Krishna and you die in Sankirtan, you go back to Godhead. If you don't think of him, then maybe not. Peter said everyone in the room just sighed like, oh, they were disappointed with that response. And but then Prabhupada saw that response and then replied, but I promise you this, if you distribute my books until your dying day, Lord Chaitanya will personally come and take you back home, back to Godhead.
That's a famous statement.
That's a famous statement. Then the devotees were relieved. Ah, okay. They got more inspiration to go out there every day. Prabhupada and Brajendranandana, they used to distribute books in vans, you know, the van parties.
Mm-hmm.
So they were called van devotees. And Brajendranandana, being the leader of one of the vans, every night he would have the devotees, the brahmacharis, listen to a tape of Prabhupada singing in 1969 on the disappearance day of his spiritual master. He sings it in a very heartfelt way. So that was really a soothing and inspiring thing before they took rest. And then a letter came from Prabhupada, and it was addressed to the Sankirtan leaders, in which Prabhupada wrote, I'm always thinking of those boys in the vans. I'm always thinking of those boys in the vans. And when Brajendranandana read that letter to his van devotees, he said that statement made our listening to the tape at night a whole different experience, knowing that he was thinking of us.
Very nice.
And then I told a story from Mola Prakriti.
Which one? The one where Prabhupada asked her about how her Sankirtan day was?
Yeah, right.
Oh, you got to tell that one. Let everyone hear it. It's wonderful.
Are you sure y'all want to hear this?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Maybe Sikarani doesn't. She's not saying anything.
No,
She's smiling. So I'll take that as a yes.
Okay.
Mola Prakriti, great devotee. Unfortunately, she's no longer with us, but married to Gopravinda Pal. Great example of married couple in devotional service.
She's like Miss Vivacious, like super people person, right? Siddhanta Prabhu?
Yeah, very much so. Very friendly. Just a mode of goodness. Just a spiritual person, and she was attractive as well, which I'm sure helped matters. But she would go out in a sari with tilak.
Wow.
She went out as a devotee.
Hardcore.
Yeah, I mean, just straight KC, you know.
Hardcore Vaishnava.
And so Prabhupada saw her crossing the lawn there in Hawaii, and Prabhupada told Upendra, he said, go down, get Mula. Asked if she was coming back from Sankirtan. So Prabhupada asked Upendra to get her to come up.
Yeah.
He wanted to know how the Sankirtan was going. So she said she was real nervous. She went upstairs not knowing what to expect. And she had a long day at the airport, and she said her hair was standing in all directions, you know, how it is when you're working, no matter what, you know, 8 hours, 10 hours a day, you know, you're not your best appearance. But but she went up right to his room anyway. And then Prabhupada said, so she came into the room. Have you been to Hawaii? Anybody been to the Honolulu temple?
I have, yes.
Mm-hmm. So, you know, Prabhupada's room is upstairs there, and they have a nice Prabhupada Murti still there. I did when you watch the Hawaii interviews, that's where I did those interviews. You'll recognize Prabhupada there. Nice pale blue painted room and everything. So she came in and just opened the door. And there's like the room itself is actually pretty good size room. Krishna Chandra, you can maybe, I don't know, what is it? You think 20 by 15 or 20 by 30? It's a fairly good size room.
I would see at least 20 by 20. It's been 20 years since I've been there, but
right. So anyway, so she comes and just opens the door and sits down there at the door, which is pretty good distance from Prabhupada. But Prabhupada said, no, come closer. Sit to Mula. And so she goes a little closer. She says, no, come closer. So he does this 2 or 3 times till she's almost like right next to Prabhupada. And then Prabhupada says, So how's it going? And then Mullah says, I was choking from nervousness and said, Srila Prabhupada, people are taking your books. They like your books. He said, yes, they are liking. I said, yes, Srila Prabhupada. And not only people in America, but people from all over the world. He said, oh, what kind of people did you distribute to today? I strained my brain to remember and said, teachers and students and lawyers and mothers and old people, every kind of person. He said, more types of people. I was trying to think of more people, and he leaned over excited to hear. And he said, what are they saying? I said, they say that they're interested in this kind of knowledge. He said, what do you say? I said, I say that it's transcendental knowledge you can't find in any other book. It will make you happy. It's about God and about love of God. He said, yes, this is very nice. I know what I want you to say. He asked Upendra to bring Bhagavatam Canto 1, Part 1, and he opened it right to the verse that says, this Bhagavad Purana is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen, just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to this dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Prabhupada said, see how beautifully Srimad Bhagavatam sells itself. Anyone who heard this from Srimad Bhagavatam would think, I must read this book. I must. That's Prabhupada's words. That's what you need to tell people. Tell them straight from Srimad Bhagavatam. I am excited when I read Srimad Bhagavatam, so certainly they will be as well. Then he said, you distribute books to people from which countries? I started listing people from all the countries I could think of that we have ever distributed a book to. And he said, more. He said, I'm sitting in my room absorbed in writing these literatures. And all the time, I think about how these books are being received by the public. Book distribution is also popularization of this transcendental knowledge. I want this knowledge to be distributed in a way that people will appreciate it. And I want it to be popularized everywhere. That was this instruction to her. And Brajendra Nandana tells the story how he distributed books.
Before you go there, I just wanted to ask you, is this from another interview where Mula Prakriti was saying that I think there was another sannyasi in the room, and he was sort of like kind of like giving Mula Prakriti sort of like not a dirty look, but like, because
it was a dirty look.
Okay. She was bubbling over with enthusiasm, and Prabhupada was eating it right up. And there was this incredible reciprocation going on between Mullah and Prabhupada, and the sannyasi was like,
oh, no. Okay, hold on a minute.
Okay, go on.
I have to stop you there. That's not really correct.
Okay, go ahead.
You have to go listen to the story again. So Mullah is sitting there in front of Prabhupada, and Prabhupada's making he's talking, and Mullah describes how her nature was that she would have the tendency to interrupt people a lot on Sankirtan. That was kind of her nature. She was so enthusiastic that she would kind of like know where they were going in their train of thought.
Right.
And then she would then answer them or interrupt and finish the sentence or conclude, the point of whatever their discussion is about. So Prabhupada at one point was making a comment, and before Prabhupada could finish the sentence, she interrupted with something that he was going to say, and she said what he was going to say, and it kind of startled Prabhupada because no one ever does that to the guru. And at that point, there was a sannyasi who walked by and saw what was going on, and he saw that she interrupted him, and he goes, "No, don't interrupt. That's rude. That's not the right etiquette in front of your spiritual master." And she goes, "Oh." She realized that was her nature, and she shouldn't have done that. And Prabhupada said, "Oh, okay." And then he continued on. And anyway, it happened again. But what she said when she interrupted was the correct line of thought that Prabhupada was going on. So it wasn't so bad, but it was okay. He accepted it. But he goes on again talking about something else. And she interrupts, but what she interrupted with was the wrong answer to what Prabhupada was going to say. She said something that was not what he was going to say.
Okay.
And so he's really taken aback. And by this time, the sannyasi had come into the room and really gave her a stare like, oh my God, what the hell have you just done here? This is not proper. And just, just made her feel like, oh my God, just I created an operade. So she goes, oh, I'm sorry, Srila Prabhupada. And she starts to back up out of the room. If you remember the room. And so the door's behind her and she doesn't want to turn her back to Prabhupada. So she's on her hands and knees and it's kind of like crawling back like this. And then Prabhupada sees, knows her heart and her sincerity. And then he smiles and says, oh, just see how enthusiastic she is.
Nice.
So then she stopped moving out of the room, but stayed there in the back and realized she should, keep quiet from there on. But she was taught a lesson, but at the same time received the compassion and the mercy of the Guru. But,
you were going to mention about Brajendra Nandana?
Well, just that, I can not read the whole thing, but he describes how he preaches from the books. And a lot of times he would, like a lot of book distributors would use the paintings, the paintings from the books as a way to sell a book. So he would use that one painting of the soul in the chariot being controlled by the five senses.
Right.
And he would describe that to a person. And he says, see, yeah, here we are, we're the soul and the intelligence. And then once you get, if you don't control your senses with your intelligence, then they'll run wild. He would just describe the scene. He said, just like, you know what I'm talking about. He would like draw them in because who cannot, everyone can relate to that. And so that's how he would describe his means of book distribution.
That was Brajendra Nandana, not Rajendra Nandana.
That is correct. Brajendra Nandana from Badger. He's has a full beard now. He's still a devotee, associated with Narayan Maharaj after some time. But
right, I met him there.
That's okay. Then he describes how he would just he would describe how also that he would describe from the Bhagavatam. He would read right from the Bhagavatam when he said he would tell the people, like they would go into college dormitories to sell the Krishna books. He said, I would say to these students, he said, just listen to this. When Krishna walked on the bank of the Jamuna, he was seen nicely decorated with tilak on his head. He was garlanded with different kinds of forest flowers, and his body was smeared with the pulp of sandalwood and tulsi leaves. Being pleased by the humming sound of the bees, Krishna would play his flute. And he says it was so sweet, and the people bought books just based on hearing that passage from the Krishna book. He said it was so sweet a time to be able to distribute books on the basis of the books themselves. Wow. And Brajendra Nandana said, that's what Prabhupada really asked us to do. And he said, Prabhupada said, lie to some and not to others. How will that help you become Brahminical? Prabhupada said, there is sufficient merit in our books that if you simply describe them not sincerely to anyone, they will purchase. He said, that art you must develop, not the art of lying.
Mm-hmm. Selling the book on its own merit. Right.
And that's another thing. When I was distributing books in the airport in Denver, I had the opportunity to be with Gopur Vindapal, Mullah's husband.
Right.
The guy was empowered. I tell you, he was like such an intelligent and sweet and sincere devotee, and he knew the philosophy, but somehow or another, he had the Shakti. Anybody that I was distributing with, I was kind of like, I was really a rookie compared to him. But someone would come up and immediately he could sense from their persona, he would know where their modes were, whether it was mode of ignorance, passion, or goodness, and he would sense what their desires were. And he would preach from the books based on what Krishna told him about this person, what would enable him, he should say to enable that person to want that book. There was no forcing. It was no like, here, let me give you, here, let me give
Yeah,
you
yeah.
change, you know, none of that. And Tripurari was in the airport at that same time too.
Yeah.
So I saw both sides of the spectrum.
So he was really expert in
So expert, very
psych-
Krishna conscious. He was,
understanding people's psychology.
yeah, Krishna conscious. And that was the thing. There was a debate between him, Agopa, and Tripurari
Okay.
about whether there should be classes on Sankirtan techniques. And this is also in the memories book, you can see. But so they broached this subject to Prabhupada because they were debating. Yes, you should. One devotee said yes, no, and Gopa and Tripurari were like kind of having their own little debate amongst themselves what to do. And because they were, Gopa was prepared to have Sankirtan classes, like a demonstration in front of the devotees. You know, okay, well, you approach someone, hey, how are you? Where are you from? You know, have you seen these yet? And you put the book in the hand. You know, all these different things that you could, selling techniques. You know, and so they said, Prabhupada, we're wondering whether we should have Sankirtan classes. And Prabhupada said, yes, classes in the morning and classes in the evening. No, we're wondering whether we should have Sankirtan. Yes, yeah. Probably yes. Bhagavatam class in the morning, Gita class at night. He was not thinking of any kind of sales technique, you know, other than becoming Krishna conscious. That was Prabhupada's philosophy. Read the books, learn the philosophy, learn the books, and you'll be empowered to sell the books.
I have a cassette from the 80s from Krishna Balaram Mandir, where a bunch of Tripurari Swami's men, because he told me that he had 90 men under his care when he was on Radha Damodar party. Mm-hmm. And that they were putting on a Sankirtan skits, you know, like approaching people in there, you know, how to deal with different kinds of people. Mm-hmm. I thought it, you know, of course, I'm not challenging Prabhupada's point of view, but I mean, it was entertaining for the devotees because they were, you know, they were making it entertaining and you know, they brought a lot of laughter and humor, but we're also getting some insight. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, who knows if he knew really what they were talking about, but the
Siddhanta,
second.
Sorry, Siddhanta Prabhu. So was there a difference in the philosophy of distributing books between Tripurari Maharaj and Gopa Vrindapal Prabhu? Like the Tripurari Maharaj, was he straight up, or did he kind of use more deception, like maybe not straight up Krishna consciousness? Like
he was not as pure as Gopa Vrindapal.
Wow.
I can say that in his preaching. That the time that I was with him, that it was more of a technique. I also went to St. Louis and distributed books with him there, with Sura and Tripurari. But it was more of the change up kind of thing. He would get the book in their hand and say it one line or something. I don't know if it was a George Harrison line or feeding people. Don't quote me on that, but it was more high pressured than it was getting to someone's heart and understanding, as Gopa was empowered to do, to find out what their likes and dislikes and desires were and goals in life, to be able to then take part of the philosophy from the book that would speak to their goals of life. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if it was a difference in philosophy or just, you know, I know there was a difference whether there was a debate, controversy, whether the devotees should dress up in karmi clothes or keep, you know, distributing books in dhotis and saris. That was another issue that was brought to Prabhupada's attention. And he resolved it by, once he realized from Karandar that that the book sales would diminish if they only distributed books in devotional clothes. Then Prabhupada, it was like a no-brainer. Said, okay, then they can wear clothes. Those that want to wear clothes can wear clothes. You know,
that follows the mood in Prabhupada's purports in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, where he describes the responsibility of the Acharya to come up with new ways of preaching. Mm-hmm. And so, you know, that's totally in line with that. You know,
yeah, time, place, and circumstance. You know, you have to. Wasn't breaking any principle to wear karmi clothes and distributing. Wasn't breaking a principle.
Yeah,
you know, even I mean, Go ahead. Sorry.
So the point is though that, okay, you can go out there and wear clothes, but when you come back, you take them off.
Yeah, of course.
And
Yeah.
you put on your dhoti and saris and so on.
Yeah. Now, in relationship to that, the last story that I told the Russian devotees was a story from Praghosh. Would you like to hear that story? It's a
Please.
it's a killer story.
Of course.
Prabhu is my dear friend. He stayed with us for like 7 months here last year.
Did he have his teeth then?
No.
Yeah. Udayananda gave him the money to get his teeth, but he used that money to help his son out.
Well, I gave him money for it too.
Oh, no. Anyway, he's a great devotee for sure.
Wonderful, wonderful. I asked him to come back. I miss him.
Oh yeah, he's here in LA, I think.
Yeah.
So, stop me if you've heard this story before, but
even if I have, I want to hear it again.
you want to hear it again?
It's more nectar hearing it from you.
Yes.
Praghosh tells it much better than me, but you can watch it. It's also on the YouTube channel. I'll be sending you Krishna Chandra and others if you want. You can send me. Everybody can send me your email address to prabhupadamemories@gmail.com, and then I could directly send you the link to the YouTube channel. And Praghosh, this particular story is on DVD number 56. If you write that down, you have to remember 56, or you could see his picture on there. Anyway, it's it's an hour and a half, 2 hour long video, but this particular story is the last story of the video. If you want to fast forward to the end, because he does tell it much better than I. But if you don't watch it, here it is. So he also describes how Prabhupada would have meetings with the Sankirtan men. They would be the groups of men they would call his Sankirtan devotees. And generally, Prabhupada would tell them, thank you very much. And my Guru Maharaj thanks you very much. And he said that in Hawaii, if you dedicate your whole life to distributing these books, I promise you will go back to home, back to Godhead. And he would say this is Praghosh's words. This is what he garnered from Prabhupada explaining this directly to him and the other Sankirtan devotees, that he would say this in a way like a loving father telling his son a secret. So it wasn't like, a sales pitch on Prabhupada's, part to hype them up to go out and sell, but this was like, here's how you can definitely go back to Godhead. It was like a secret. So Praghosh says that the first airport that he worked in was in Hawaii, and it was illegal. And he said, for 4 months, I worked that I'm going to speak in his voice now. Okay, this is Praghosh speaking. For 4 months, I worked that airport every day, and I used to run from the security cops. One day, a cop arrested me and took me in the office and threw me up against the wall. He was very thuggish, not too professional, big guy. And he pushed me up against the wall, grabbed my shirt, and said, now listen, I'm not going to tell you again, don't come back here. I'll have you arrested. I looked at him and said, I'm not going to tell you again. I'm coming back here every day. He said the guy was completely flummoxed. He was perplexed. He said, do you want me to arrest you? I said, you can arrest me. I'm single. He said, you're single? I said, I'm single. I don't have a wife. I don't have any kids. You can arrest me. I can sit in jail for a few days. No big deal. The cop started laughing. He said, you don't care? I said, no, I don't care at all. I said, but as soon as I get out, I'm going to come back here. I said, I give out 40 to 50 of these books every day, mostly to service guys. You all know what service guys are, right? Military guys. They need these books. These books are very important. So then the guy let go of me. He backed up and I started preaching to him. In my mind, I prayed to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, give me the right thing to say. I said, you follow me around so much. You're trying to catch me all the time. I said, you're thinking about me all the time. The guy got an embarrassed look on his face. I said, I think you should read one of these books. I think that's why you're following me. Krishna wants you to follow me. I said, take this book home, read it. If you really feel that there is nothing of value in this book, then okay. but I think you'll find something of value. So the next day I had one of the devotee women make me a cheesecake at the temple. I took it to the airport and I hunted for the cop. I didn't wait for him to catch me. I hunted for him. I gave him the cheesecake and he looked at me and said, all right, okay, all right. I read your book, a little bit of your book. I've read enough. You're okay. He said, but I got a boss and he's going to get on my case if I don't get on your case. Then he said, so you do me a favor. When you see me walking, you sit down. Don't talk to people. Let me walk through. Let me walk away. Let me go into the other airport wing. And then you go back to what you were doing. Is that okay? I said, we got a deal. We shook hands. Then Pragosh describes that he said that in those days we had a level of conviction in what we were distributing, and we had this authority because Prabhupada was absolutely cracking the whip. He was cracking the whip in the most loving, wonderful way. It was impossible to say no to Prabhupada because he was literally like the king and the general. The book distributors especially saw him in that generalship, kingly way, probably more so than maybe others, because that was the relationship that we had. In New York at the LaGuardia airport, I used to bring the cop every Friday a cheesecake, again with the cheesecakes. Seems to work, getting to people's tongues. It has that ability to soften people's hearts. Yeah. Prabhupada did once say in another story, if you give somebody a cookie, you've made a friend for life.
Yeah.
And then he said, when I failed to bring him a cheesecake, the cop would come out and look for me and he would get upset. He would say, hey, where's my cheesecake? So it did have some benefit there. And then when Srila Prabhupada came to Chicago, a reporter asked, Swamiji, why did you come to Chicago? Without skipping a beat, Prabhupada picked up the Time magazine with the cover headline, Crime, Why and What to Do. Chicago's known for its crime right there.
Al Capone.
Now and back then as well. So, it was a big deal. So Time magazine had a whole front page and a whole article about it. And Prabhupada, holding up the magazine, said, why? Because you have a big problem here in Chicago. Too much crime. Here it says, crime, why and what to do. I have come to show you why and what to do. Pragosh laughed. Prabhupada was not like any other guru or sadhu. Prabhupada was showing up with guns blazing. Exactly. He put everybody on the hot seat and we loved it. He was like Muhammad Ali. You ladies know who Muhammad Ali is? He's probably the best boxing prize fighter, heavyweight champion of all time from here in America.
And he received many, many of Prabhupada's books at the airport.
He did, right. And he appreciated them.
He liked the devotees.
Yeah. So that's just an example how Pragosh was comparing Prabhupada's fighting mood with the heavyweight champion of the world in boxing, Muhammad Ali. It was a good analogy. It was a positive analogy. So he's like saying as if Prabhupada was behaving as if Prabhupada would say, for the next 20 years, I'll whip any man from any country, anytime, any place. That's what Prabhupada was like. He was like, I'm from Goloka. I'm not from here. I'll take you all on one at a time or all together at the same time. Let's go.
That's Pragosh.
That was Pragosh describing Prabhupada's, the mood that he got from Prabhupada. Yeah. That he was not afraid of anybody. That's true.
Fearless.
Prabhupada was fearless. He would come, he knew where someone was coming from, whether their question or statement was in a mode of goodness with inquisitive nature or whether it was a challenging nature. So Prabhupada obviously, like Gopa could pick up on somebody, Prabhupada could pick up on anybody's heart.
Please.
Way above what Gopa could do. This is the purity of the pure devotee.
Please tell that story about the time that Prabhupada, I think it was in Philadelphia. I don't know if it's Ravindra Swarup that tells it. And Prabhupada, no, it's Bhadra Narayan that tells it, Maharaj. And Prabhupada grabs the guy by the collar and he's saying, he was talking about a cotton ball and a cotton shirt.
Okay, yeah, that's another story. Let me just finish. I only have one more paragraph for Coach.
Okay.
I like your enthusiasm.
Go.
So all the devotees had the same spirit, and we got that from Prabhupada. This again is Pragosha's words. As a matter of fact, the largest number of devotees to join the movement joined from the time the BBT was started in 1972 until the time Prabhupada left the planet. I had no earthly idea how I went from where I was to how I became a devotee in the space of 3 months. I have no earthly idea. He joined in Detroit. I have no earthly idea how that happened. I was a passionate athlete, and he's strong, he's an athletic, handsome guy. I was a passionate athlete, smart enough and articulate enough that I could be a book distributor. I think Krishna looked over and he said, this guy, he's got all this energy. It will be completely squandered in the material world, totally wasted. My pure devotee is over here, and he's got a serious task to do. So here is one of 1,000 I'm going to grab by the hair, pull them right out of their material world, whatever it is. So many book distributors were musicians, athletes, or losers from the material perspective. Then suddenly they were all just dragged in by Krishna with the idea, here my pure devotee wants so desperately to accomplish all of this. Now you get the mercy, you get the credit, you get the fun, you get the joy, you get the excitement. It was exciting going on Sankirtan during that period. You never knew what was going to happen. Someone would respond in an amazing way to the book itself. Someone would respond in a negative way. And then eventually later, they would get turned and become your friend. It was amazing. Miraculous things would happen, miraculous. And we got to witness it. So how it happened, we have no idea. Prabhupada injected something very special. And then the last thing he said was that when he was in Washington, Mother Meena said to Prabhupada, Prabhupada, it seems so strange that you tell us women to be chaste, shy, quiet, and submissive. Prabhupada said, yes, what is the difficulty? She said, well, that's not my question. My question is, you also send us out every day on Sankirtan, and we have to stop men in the street, and we have to smile at them, and we have to speak nicely to them, and we have to talk to them, and then we convince them to give us money. Prabhupada said, yes, what is the difficulty? She said, well, it seems one is at odds with the other. It seems that you are asking us in some situations to be aggressive, but as women, we're not really supposed to be aggressive. Prabhupada looked at her and said, I am also an aggressor. When I came to this country, I was aggressive. I was very aggressive. You can also be aggressive. But then Prabhupada said, you must learn how to be a lion on the chase and a lamb at home. When you get home, then you can be a Mataji. He said, is that all right? She was smiling from ear to ear. She knew then that she could go out every day be an aggressor and stop people. Hey, you're not your body. Guess where you come from? Guess what? You're actually a rich person. You're a wealthy person. You just don't know it. You come from a very wealthy family. Now here, take this book. And then come back to the temple and be this simple devotee. So Prabhupada was the powerhouse behind all of that. He was the powerhouse. And sometimes it was quietly injected, and sometimes it was powerfully injected. And everyone felt it. Thus ends Pragosha's story.
Glories to Pragosh Prabhu.
Aye.
Jai.
Hare Krishna.
I met Pragosh Prabhu at last year's Rath Yatra. Did I tell you, Siddhanta Prabhu?
Where, in Toronto?
No, in New
New
York.
York?
New York Rath Yatra. Did I tell you?
No, I don't think so.
Jivan Mukta, I think I told you.
Mm-hmm.
So I was talking to a couple of Danadar Swami's disciples just south the Hoyt and Skirmerhorn temple. And then someone comes and taps me on the back. And I turn around and I see this fellow.
Oh, right. You told me that, but go ahead for the other.
Yeah, and I thought like, I know him, but I'm like, I wasn't quite like fully recognizing him. And he said, it's Pragosh. Because I noticed he didn't have his teeth at the time.
It makes such a difference to have teeth in your mouth. The whole facial structure changes. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then I said to the two young couples, I said, this is Pragosh Prabhu. He's one of the top Prabhupada's book distributors in the entire world. He's amazing. And I said, Pragosh, please tell these nice devotees, one of your favorable, one of the times that you met a celebrity and it was a favorable exchange with them. And he said, celebrity? He said, okay. He said, one time I was distributing Life Comes from Life at the airport. And he said, I saw Charlton Heston passing through. And he said, Mr. Heston. And he stopped and he went up to him and he said, when I was a little boy, my mom dressed me up and my other, I don't know, brothers and sisters dressed us all up in our Sunday best suits and took us to see you in the movie theater when you were Ben-Hur. And Charlton Heston was like, oh, thanks very much, shucks. And then and he gave him the Life Comes from Life, and they're having a really nice congenial exchange. And then some crazy, fanatic Christian guy came up and said, don't listen to him. He's just one of them Hare Krishnas. He's just, he's brainwashed. And Charlton Heston said, I don't remember inviting you. And they just completely deflated the guy.
Yeah. So he did some seva, Charlton Heston.
Yes.
Very good.
Yes.
Kirk
But
Douglas
I could
was
listen to
different, though.
Prabhu all day. Oh, yes, you met him?
No, Dramilla did. Do you all know Dramilla?
Oh, okay. Oh,
No.
yes. I don't know if everyone else knows.
He's an American, joined the temple here in LA, but probably one of the longest distributors of Prabhupada's books. He's still distributing books. He lives in New Orleans. So he's somehow or another, his karma is such that he's been able to meet a lot of movie stars on Sankirtan. And I interviewed him. I got all of his Sankirtan stories on tape too. Actually, when I showed some of these videos, some of his videos at the LA temple before COVID hit, I would go every Saturday and Sunday morning while the devotees honored prasadam, breakfast prasadam. And there's a big monitor there in the prasadam hall and big speakers, sound bar. And so I would show Prabhupada memories during this time. But then after I interviewed Dramilla, I would show his stories of talking about Sankirtan, a lot about movie stars that he distributed books to. And Brigopati, who's been a book distributor for eons too, Sankirtan leader in America and Europe and all over, he told me after he watched those that, similar to what you were saying, that he got more realizations and joy from hearing Dramilla's stories, talking about how to distribute and what the reactions were of people on the street, distributing books, over and above hearing about Prabhupada. But that was just his realization. But he met Kirk Douglas once. Kirk Douglas, you all may, you're probably all too young to remember.
Very famous actor.
Maybe Krishna Chandra. No,
I know a little bit. But I know Michael Douglas's son.
Yeah, that's his son. Kirk Douglas, so many movies. He played so many roles. You could go on imdb.com and look up Kirk Douglas. But anyway, he was just the opposite of Charlton Heston. That when Dramilla came up to him, Kirk Douglas had been into a lot of airports, so he knew that this was a Hare Krishna devotee coming up to him. and Kirk Douglas is known by his big dimple he has on his chin. That's one of his physical traits. And Dramilla does a much better impersonation than I can do. So you'll have to watch him on my other YouTube channel. But he says, I wouldn't give you guys one plug nickel. But it was fun. And then Dramilla said, okay, that's all right. He greeted him in a nice way. But it's on Sankirtan, you meet all, people from all different spectrums of modes of nature. But Kareem Abdul-Jabbar got several books from Dramilla, and he describes that stories. Diane Lane, the famous actress, he tells a story about her. So that's my next video series, is going to be Sankirtan stories.
Nice. What was I so enthusiastic about before? I can't remember now.
Cotton Ball.
Oh, okay. You want to tell that story?
Well, you seem to have been going on pretty
No,
good.
I don't remember the details. But it was discussing Mayavad philosophy, right? And the professor was an impersonalist.
Yeah, Prabhupada was trying to get him to understand Chinta Beta Beta Tattva, simultaneously one and different. And Prabhupada was trying to give the example, or was giving the example of a shirt. You were wearing a shirt made out of cotton. And he said, cotton ball and cotton shirt, are they the same? And the man said, no, they're not the same. No, but they're simultaneously one and different. One is, they're both made from cotton, but one is different than the others. And this man just couldn't get the concept about Achinta Beta Beta Tattva. I forget how the story ends.
Doesn't Prabhupada grab him by the shirt?
Yeah, yes. I think it was
Cotton
with
ball or cotton shirt?
yeah, I think it was his passion. The man finally accepted and got it. That okay, yes, I get it.
Now, is that the same story as when Prabhupada was arguing with someone and the man wouldn't stop arguing and he pointed to Brahmananda?
No, that's a different story.
Can you tell that one? I just want to welcome Lavanya here.
Okay, so okay.
I want to
Haribo
welcome
Lavanya.
Lavanya Mataji. Lavanya
Haribo.
for the first time. You're in Seattle, right, Lavanya?
You're muted.
Halfway between Seattle and Vancouver, BC.
Fantastic.
That's a nice part of the country.
And Lavanya is a disciple of our godbrother Drita Karma Prabhu.
All right.
And I met her when she came to Toronto. And
you said Druta Karma or Drita Karma?
Lavanya, what's the proper pronunciation?
Druta Karma.
Yeah, he's the scientist.
Yeah.
Yeah, Druta Karma. He's here in LA.
The forbidden archaeologist.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
He's very advanced. He's certainly capable of taking you back, Lavanya, so you're in good hands. So the other story was about a man on a morning walk with Prabhupada, and Brahmananda was there. As Brahmananda was on the walk with me also in Denver. He was everywhere recording Prabhupada. And this man was having difficulty with the prasadam, with so much sugar in the halava and different things. And he was trying to say, this is not good. This is not a good diet. And Prabhupada pointed to Brahmananda, who's 6'2", 300 pounds. He says, this is my disciple. He's been eating prasadam for a long time. And if I say so, he can kill you. Trying to understand, you get him to understand that prasadam doesn't make you weak, that he has a lot of physical strength from eating prasadam as well. Not that he would literally kill him, but that he got the point. The man shut up.
One of the most intimidating statements I've ever heard from Prabhupada. I don't think he meant it to intimidate him, but
I think he did.
Oh yeah,
and the man shut up. Yeah, he was serious. But I mean, he got the, not that Prabhupada would tell Brahmananda to kill him, not literally.
Of course not.
But he got the point across. Very quick wit. Prabhupada had a very quick wit. One time, a Mataji came up to Prabhupada in San Francisco and said, "Oh, Swamiji, you look very nice today." Prabhupada said, "Oh, just today?" Very quick.
I like the one where Prabhupada was in the airplane and the stewardess was purposely neglecting Prabhupada because she thought Prabhupada kind of looked weird, or I don't know exactly, what's going through the mind of the stewardess, but she was not being very helpful. But one of the times that she was walking by, she had one of these beehive hairdos that was like piled up on her head.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada complimented her and he said, "Oh, what a lovely hairdo you have." And she said, "Oh, thank you very much. Is there something I can get for you?" And she went to first class and she got I don't think Prabhupada was in first class. He was in economy class, but she went right out of her way to serve Prabhupada very nicely.
Yeah, I don't know that story. Who told you that one?
I can't remember the source.
You have to have quote, chapter and verse. Another airplane story, though, I can tell you from Shruta Kirti.
I know this one.
It's in the 5th volume.
It's excellent.
Are you sure you know what I'm going to say? Because there's several airplane stories.
Is this the lady from Brazil?
No.
No?
No.
Okay. Okay,
No.
go on.
There you
No.
go, Gore. You're just like Mother Malaprukti.
Yeah, Mullah
Mullah
Prakriti.
Prakriti.
Yeah.
Malaprukti.
You're gonna interrupt with the wrong response.
Yeah.
Um, they're getting Shruti Kirti describes being a servant for 2.5 years or so, was always with Prabhupada naturally, and on a plane, they were getting off a plane. And as they had all gotten up to get in the aisle, getting ready to deplane. And they were very tight quarters. You know, when you stand up in these aisles that are very narrow, you're just very close to one another. Prabhupada was Shruti Kirti was really close to Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was really close to a lady that was in the row in front of them. And Prabhupada noticed her, and she was a very beautiful woman from Italy. They somehow or another knew that she was an Italian lady, and a very attractive lady. And Prabhupada said, "Oh, she's very beautiful, don't you think?" He says that to Shruti Kirti. And then the woman heard him. And she said, "Oh, well, thank you very much." And he said, "No, it's not a compliment. It's just a fact." So Prabhupada was old enough and pure enough that he could, make a statement, "Oh, you're very beautiful," but not in a lusty way,
Right.
as, I would do.
Yeah.
Let's be honest, I'm not on that platform. So, but she took it without, "Oh, thank you very much." No, it's not a compliment. And then she took that in stride too, that he wasn't being offensive to her by saying that it wasn't done in a motive, passionate way and, a material way at all. But because Prabhupada noticed beauty everywhere, he saw everything in relationship to Krishna.
Sure.
Beauty comes from Krishna. So that's her good karma for having that beauty. He would, like when Kishore described how a lady in the UK at the Manor, after a class, said Prabhupada to Prabhupada, after they asked for questions and answers, she said, "Can you see Krishna?" Kind of in a challenging way. And she had come to the temple quite often there, and that she was kind of like that fighting, spirit. She was Indian bodied, so she felt like she had some authority to speak on spiritual matters, So after Prabhupada gave the class, she said she was the first one to raise her hand, and they said, Prabhupada called on her. She said, "Can you see Krishna?" "Yes, you cannot see Krishna." No, she said, "Can you see God?" "Yes, you cannot see." She was silent. Prabhupada was silent. He said, "Yes, I can see Krishna everywhere. Why you cannot see?" She was silent. She had no response. Silent for a minute, 2 minutes. The whole room was silent, waiting for this woman to respond. And finally, Prabhupada said, "Do you want to see God?"
Wow.
She shook her head no. And Prabhupada immediately said, "Therefore you cannot see God." From a very gentle way of having a discussion with her. And then finally, when she admits that she doesn't want to see God,
Like a lightning bolt.
No desire there. Then Kishore described that when Prabhupada went like that, he could literally see the bolt of lightning, whatever energy was coming out of Prabhupada's finger, directed this woman. And she had no response, of course, and just silently crumbled and withered to the ground like the wicked witch of the north, from the Wizard of Oz. She just melted right into the floor tiles.
The story that I was remembering, what little I can remember of it, I'm not sure if it's from Shruti Kirti Prabhu, but they were having prasadam. I believe it was Shruti Kirti. He had packed, I don't know, samosa or paratha, whatever. And first Prabhupada would eat. I believe first Prabhupada would eat, and then Shruti Kirti would eat. Now, I can't remember the detail, whether it was now Shruti Kirti eating Prabhupada's remnants or whether it was Prabhupada himself eating. but the stewardess came by and she
Okay, you
sat-
want that story?
Yeah.
Okay. So Srila Prabhupada and Paramahamsa Swami are flying on a plane. This is a Venezuelan Airlines. I'm not sure where they were going. That's not important right now. So Prabhupada had the window seat. Srila was in the middle seat, and Paramahamsa Swami was in the aisle seat, all in the same row. So typically, when Prabhupada left on a flight for somewhere, the devotees would pack him prasadam in a tiffin or some kind of container. And then more often than not, when the plane took off, then Prabhupada would say prasad to Srila being his servant. That was his cue to get out the tiffin and delve out whatever prasad was made for Prabhupada from the Madhajis or whoever made the prasad at the temple. And that day was puffed rice that was spiced. And how do you make puffed rice? Turmeric? I'm not sure.
Like a
asafoetida.
chidwa, like a chidwa.
Yeah,
this-
like chidwa, like that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Srila poured a bunch of this puffed rice on a plate for Prabhupada and put it
Right.
on his tray. And then typically, and as it was this day, when Prabhupada was finished honoring the prasad, there was still a lot of puffed rice left on that one plate. So Srila took that plate, put it on his tray, and then took half of what was left on there and put it on a plate for Paramahamsa Swami.
Ah,
So they're eating Maha Prasad.
yeah.
And at that time, as they're eating, the flight attendant from first class, the lady comes from first class into the coach area, and she's in the aisle. And there's Paramahamsa, Srila and Prabhupada. She leans over Paramahamsa Swami's tray and takes directly from Srila tray, a plate, the Maha puffed rice without asking. She didn't say, "Oh, could I try this?" She just went and grabbed it and said, "Oh, this is very good. I like this. Oh, are you vegetarians?" She asked them like that. And then they said, "Yes." She said, "Oh, well, I can go to first class. I can get something. Would you like anything from first class? I can get you fruits or whatever."
She had
then-
some nerve.
Oh yeah, she was very bold, but kind. Mode of goodness.
Yeah.
She didn't have to ask. To offer to serve Prabhupada in
Oh.
that way. And so Srila was the interpreter for Prabhupada. Of course, he could speak English, so he would say, "Prabhupada, would you like something from first class? Fruit, milk, what would you? Some hot milk." So she, okay, I can get that. So I think she brought back the hot milk and maybe some fruit as well. So this is a story that Srila told me, but he also told the story about 10, maybe 15 years ago in LA here during one of our Prabhupada Memorial Day weekend festivals, reunion of Prabhupada. It's all Prabhupada Katha. So he's telling this one story about the lady, this flight attendant. We call them flight attendants now, not stewardesses.
Right.
That's a politically correct term. My daughter flies for Hawaiian Airlines, so I got that information. So if you ever go on an airplane, don't call them stewardesses, call them flight attendants.
Okay.
But that's beside the point.
Okay.
But so Srila is telling the story that the flight attendant went and got the Maha Prasad. She got blessed by Krishna. Who knows what benefit you can get by eating? We know that. But the flight attendant didn't know that. So after Srila told the story in LA in the temple room here, amongst all the guests and everything, a devotee came up to Srila and he said, "Oh, listen, can I tell you a story?" And Srila, we all love stories. Srila loves stories. Said, "Yeah, sure. Yeah, what's your story?" So this devotee mentioned how he was distributing books. He's from Brazil and he was distributing books in Brazil. And the typical thing back then was that, and in a lot of South American countries, this is true. I went to Ecuador and found this to be true too, that in every major city, they have a plaza. There's a church there in every plaza, and then the whole town is essentially centered around the church. There's a park there and so many things. So, and a fountain right in the center of the city center. So they would generally have kirtan, Harinam there in the center. And, they would hear people, get them to chant Hare Krishna with them and maybe pass out some small books while they were gathered around, the people would gather around the devotees in dhotis. And then after they would have their Harinam party in the city center, they would each go out in the countryside. Brazil, huge country, right? So each one would get in a vehicle and go out in essentially the forest. They don't have neighborhoods like we have neighborhoods, one house after the other.
The Amazon.
So it was like, yeah, the Amazons are. So he went to one house, knocked on the door. He's in a dhoti and shaved head, tilak, sika. Lady opens the door, says, "Oh, Hare Krishna." And he's like, "What? Hare Krishna? How do you?" Because she wasn't at this gathering around the city center and the fountain there. So yes, come in. And he's like bewildered. So he obviously takes his cue and goes in her house. And there on the wall is pictures of Krishna, pictures of Prabhupada's books. He's bewildered. How the heck does this woman in the middle of the rainforest have all this paraphernalia, and Prabhupada is like in the center of her house? And he said, "Well, how do you come to know Krishna? How do you know about Prabhupada?" She said, "Well, many years ago, I was a flight attendant on one of the airplanes that your Swami was flying on. And I had some of his Maha Prasad." That was the lady.
Wow. Can't hear you, Jivan Mukta. You're on mute.
I think we could say it's Maha Prasad.
Yes.
From Lord Krishna, Prabhupada, and Shruta Kirti Prabhu.
There you go. So she got blessed. Now that's a small, you talk about a small world story. That's a small world story.
Yeah.
Amazing. Blew my mind when I first heard that.
Yeah.
So
reminds me, go ahead, Jivan.
Just saying, like these stories are so sweet, and like I said, I mean, I don't know whether anyone, would agree with me, but I love reading I'm reading Chaitanya Charitamrita right now, and it's so sweet. And, just finishing the story of Madhavendra Puri and the Gopal and Gopinath deities. But these pastimes of Srila Prabhupada, they are, to me anyway, so much sweeter, like so much sweeter.
You made my day.
They're like, just like it's, like how Prabhupada describes like the sugarcane juice, and then, it gets to, what is it? What are the like syrup, and how it gets progressively more intensified, that sweetness.
Till it becomes like rock candy.
Like rock candy. Prabhupada's pastimes are like the rock candy.
Crystallized.
Yeah.
Kaushalya mentions that story when she first met Prabhupada in Hawaii. She was a vegetarian and maybe a vegan, but she didn't eat any sugar at all.
She was like a hippie on the beach, right?
She was a hippie on the beach in Hawaii, and very strict hippie, and no meat, obviously, for years. And so she came to Prabhupada and got to meet Prabhupada and one time, and then the second time she met him, she was up in his room. I don't quote me Krishna Chandra, but I don't know if it was the temple that Ambarish bought on Coelho Way. It might have been one of the first houses. I think it was probably the first house that they had rented as a temple. And Prabhupada offered her some sugar cane. And she said, "Oh no, Swamiji," that he was called Swamiji then. No, Swamiji, that's okay. I don't eat sugar." He said, "No, this is natural." So he handed her a sugar cane, and with his purity, and he convinced her that it wasn't one that he had eaten from, but he got her to eat. Coming from a hand of a pure devotee, it's prasad. So that was her first connection to Prabhupada and to Krishna, and she became a very sincere devotee.
I remember from that series that Prabhupada was very pleased that she had the ability to recite the entire Sri Ishopanishad, and Prabhupada would encourage her to do that at programs for the Indian people. He wanted to like show her off. This is my Western. I don't know if that's from your series or not, Siddhanta, but I remember her sharing.
No, that's not one. I wouldn't doubt that. That reminds me though of another story of in a similar fashion, Kulashekar. He was one of the first.
He was the first
devotee in UK.
Yeah.
After the 6 devotees had come from America to start the yatra there. So he was their first devotee. And he had learned, I think maybe 4 of the verses. It wasn't the Ishopanishad. Yeah, it was the Ishopanishad. I think it was, you're right, the Ishopanishad. And Prabhupada was in a room having a darshan with other Indian guests there, and Kulashekar was there and some other devotees, and he wanted to show Kulashekar off to these guests, these Indian people, that he has all these students and they know Shastra so well. But Kulashekar only had memorized 4 of the verses. I don't know how many there are. You probably know how many
18.
are there. How many?
18.
Okay. Is it one Om Purnam Madhupurnam?
Yeah, first one.
Okay, right. So he starts rattling off the verses. I'm very proud. Om Purnam. But he's thinking in his mind, Srila Prabhupada, I only know 4. He's standing, he gets to the 2nd verse, and it's still like starting to sweat. 3rd verse, Prabhupada, help me. Gets to the 4th verse, and then halfway through the 4th verse, Prabhupada says, okay, that's enough. That's very good. Prabhupada knows everything. He knew.
Kulashekar told me that because he made good pals with George Harrison. And one day George Harrison phoned him up and he said, hey, I wrote a new song about you guys. Now I heard it 2 ways. I wrote this song about Srila Prabhupada, and I wrote this song about you guys. And then George proceeded to play for him over the phone. Here comes the sun. Doo, doo, doo. Told me that personally.
Well, it's said that the pure devotee, the acharya, is the external manifestation of the supersoul. And that kind of ties into the fact that invariably, Siddhanta Prabhu, I'm sure you've, it would be interesting for you to tally how many times devotees have said this, that when the first time they met Prabhupada and Prabhupada was giving a class, that they felt he was looking and speaking directly to them.
Yeah,
right.
Like,
Many times.
Not only speaking directly, but looking like directly to them. And
Right.
I think it's significant because it's not just like some type of psychological phenomenon in the sense that on the part of the individual. I think it's the reality of the fact that the spiritual master is literally it manifests, is the external manifestation of the supersoul. So
You want to know another anecdote that people
keep going.
Oh wait, and similar to what you're saying there, that how many people, so many, I tell you, from what I've interviewed, so many speak to that point. It's a fact. I haven't counted, and that's for somebody else to count. But so many devotees also talk about how when they first saw Prabhupada, that Prabhupada was floating. He was not walking on he was gliding. Indradumna Swami. Sachin Narayan, Vrindavan Vilasini, who I'm going to have in the next video. She said the same thing. And then in my materialistic mind, I'm going, no, and devotees from the UK told me that's on the videos. They say this thing, whether that is a reality or whether that is how they saw him, that he was just so pure that's how they describe it. But Sachin Narayan, who's doing the BBT work and translating Prabhupada's books into Farsi, that's what he's doing now.
Wow.
He swears to God. And he says that he talked to Indra Swami. He said, now, was this my imagination? And Indra Swami said, I saw the same thing. They both confirmed each other's stories. So who am I to say that that didn't happen?
Wow.
And that's why I leave them in there. In the story, somebody said, well, I already heard that story from volume 1. And it's again in volume 2 or 3. I said, well, that's in there to confirm that, yeah, that probably happened, that it wasn't just this one person's imagination, like a confirmation thing.
How Prabhupada, the other statement is how Prabhupada could see right into your heart, right? I've heard so many say that when Prabhupada,
it happened to me.
When Prabhupada would look at them, he was like, totally, like you were totally exposed spiritually, everything about you, past, present, and future.
Absolutely. I had met him, or not met him, but I saw him in person in 72 when he came to Dallas, Texas. And I was just a member of the audience. I hadn't joined or anything. But the time that I finally had become his disciple, initiated by letter, but when he finally came to Denver, Colorado, and sat on the Vyasa where I could be physically in front of him, offering flowers to him, it wasn't but a split second that he looked at me. He didn't nod his head or anything, acknowledge me, but his vision went into my eyes and into my heart. And it was like what you say, it was, there was no hiding. He saw me. He didn't see me, the body.
Right.
He saw me, the soul who was aspiring to, be his disciple. It was incredible.
I was telling Jivan Mukta when I was going to get my beads from Srila Prabhupada's hands in Detroit during the installation of the deity, when I was standing there in front of him, I felt completely naked. And I felt very embarrassed, not because I felt naked, but because I felt Prabhupada, the way Prabhupada was looking at me, I felt like he was looking at lifetimes and lifetimes
of material desires, right?
Yeah. And I was overwhelmed I was overwhelmed that Prabhupada was accepting me despite being so disqualified. And I was very nervous because I was thinking I'm not going to be able to live up to what Prabhupada hopes for me or expects from me, feeling very fallen, but also overwhelmed with gratitude that he's accepting me right now on the spot.
One time a devotee was so nervous in front of Prabhupada, he was just sitting there, and Prabhupada took the beads, from the microphone stand and was holding out the beads for him to take. He was just saying, so scared, so nervous, Prabhupada, pure devotee. Prabhupada said, come on, take your beads.
Atma Tattva tells that story, right?
No, not him.
No?
No.
Atma Tattva Prabhu is a great storyteller.
He's a very good storyteller. Yeah.
He also stayed with us for a few months.
Ah. Yeah, I haven't heard from him in a long time. I hope he's okay. Who that was he was
I remember hearing someone
Sureshvara, sorry.
Someone in the Gaudiya Mat, or I forget, like criticizing Prabhupada, or someone in India criticizing Prabhupada and his voice, his singing voice, saying that do you remember that? Someone was very critical of Prabhupada's singing voice.
No.
Yet today again, I was listening, and like I said to Gore before, being a musician, I think I'm pretty good at determining something that's not good. But Prabhupada's voice is just everything about him is just so transcendental. It's so otherworldly. It's so beautiful in an eternal way. Like the quality, the depth, the of his voice, the way he the melodies that he comes up with, and you know that these melodies are all being improvised.
Someone also described that he had pitch perfect. His pitch was perfect.
His pitch was. It was like you never hear him off pitch ever,
Right.
ever. And I know, like when I try to sing, it's like I'm terrible. But Prabhupada is like, he was a Grihasta businessman, householder. He would chant maybe at home, but it's not like he was a professional musician. But you listen to his bhajans, and there's nothing to compare. Nothing.
Krishna is the ability in man.
Yeah.
I just have a comment here from Kula Shekhar. I'm going through old conversations with him. And he said, Nandu Kumar told me that Srila Prabhupada used to carry my photo with him in his spectacle case. And then that just made me think, you can tell it better, that Prabhupada, very early on, he found a picture of Brahmananda Prabhu's girlfriend in his wallet. Remember that?
I don't know that story.
Prabhupada saw the photo of Brahmananda Prabhu's girlfriend, and he said, but she's not even beautiful. Like, if you're gonna have a girlfriend, at least have a beautiful one.
He asked Brahmananda, how did you join? Because in the early days, we wanted to know how devotees came to Krishna consciousness. And Brahmananda said that he joined because he came with a friend, but the friend left, but he stayed. He said, Prabhupada said, oh, that is how I joined.
Narendra Malik.
Yes.
Malik, yeah.
So he's very down to earth, but practical and spiritual all at the same time.
Brahmananda tells that story where Prabhupada told him that you should pay your obeisances to your mother when you see her. So when he went home, he rang the doorbell. And then before the mom came to the door, he was down on the ground, and his mom came and was like, what's going on? And she sees her son offering her obeisances to him.
Right.
And she attended Brahmananda's initiation. And after the initiation ceremony was over, Mrs. Sharf, right? Sharf. Prabhupada said to her, so, it's usually the tradition that when the boy gets initiated, that some donation should be given to the guru. And she said, well, I've just given you both of my sons. And he said, oh, that's right. That's okay.
Yeah, that was a ploy, I think. That's what Brahmananda thought.
Oh, okay. In that way, she was actually giving her sons.
Yeah, it was like confirmation. Okay, no fighting from me. I already gave you my boys. So, okay, right. So there's no argument.
You have to ask for more.
Yeah, that's enough. It's like when he was trying to get the deities, he had another selling ploy when Prabhupada asked Mukunda and Tamal and the devotees that came to the UK that they needed to get Radha Krishna deities. But they didn't even know what deities were. And so they put out some kind of message, to the Indian community, posters around, does anybody have deities? And then the deadline was coming very quick because they already advertised there's going to have the opening of the temple, and Prabhupada wanted the deities to be part of the ceremony to open the temple there. Finally, they got a call from somebody. We have deities. Oh, okay. So Tamal went over there, Mukunda, Shamasunder, I forget exactly which of the devotees went, but they saw the deities. It was the big deities. I think it was it Radha Gokulananda or
Radhalandishvara.
was it
Yeah,
Radhalandishwar
yeah.
deities?
Mhm.
And there was some defect on Radharani's hand, I think, or her cheek or something. There was some defect there that they couldn't use it in their center.
Right.
So they said, oh, they bowed down, and then they said, well, we have to tell our Swami about this. They said, okay, go ahead. So they called him. It was like late at night. And they called Prabhupada up and they said, we have the deeds. Oh, take me immediately. So they went there, and Prabhupada walked in and saw the Indian family there and didn't ask to see the deities or anything while he came there. They said, oh, what's your name and what is your name? You have children? What? Let me see your children. Introduced the children, introduced to all the other servants that were in the house. Oh, really? Very nice. And all the topic was about just niceties. And then the man who wants to get something, try to sell the deities, to not get rid of them, but give them to Prabhupada, but expecting some remuneration for them,
Right.
was like anxious. Why isn't he talking about, doesn't he want to see the deities?
Prabhupada's so smart.
Yeah, he said, don't you want to see the deities? He said, yeah, we can see, it's okay. You know, like never. Then he went on to another topic, you know, but finally the man was getting anxious, you know, nervous and anxious about the deities. I wanted, you know, you must have the deities. So yes, okay, let's see. And Prabhupada was just very renounced. Yeah, okay, yeah, but let's see. And then they took the sheets off. Yeah, Prabhupada was like, yes. He didn't like have a beaming smile or anything on his face. Very renounced.
What a great negotiator.
Totally.
That's expert.
And then they said, then the man said, well, don't you want these deities? And Prabhupada said, well, Mukunda, Tamal, go see how heavy they are. And then he went over and leaned back. Krishna, I don't know who leaned back who, but another devotee leaned back, Radharani. Not very heavy, Prabhupada. All right, let's go. Take them. Let's go. Pick them up. Let's go. They immediately picked them up, walked down the stairs, put them in the van. And the man and his family are walking out, but Swamiji. And they're in the van with the deities. And at the, you know, the Prabhupada's sitting in the passenger window, the windows roll down, the man's there, but Swamiji, Prabhupada, that's all right. We will take very good care of them. Thank you very much. now drive. I don't know if it was Mukunda or Tamal, something. Now drive. They drove off, leaving them, you know, on the sidewalk, bewildered. But they get around the corner, not very far away, several blocks away. Prabhupada said, okay, stop the van. They stopped the van. Then Prabhupada started chanting the Brahma Samhita.
Wow. Wow. He was
Krishna.
installing them, receiving them on the spot.
Krishna has come.
Yes. Amazing story.
So on that note, at 7:00, I have to go to another
Thank you
seminar.
so much. That was like
Pure nectar.
nectars.
Became a good night, Lavanya.
Really? And if anyone knows Mukunda Chor from Seattle and Vancouver, he left his body to the Codicy before yesterday, and tomorrow we're going to have a Zoom memorial from 2 to 4 p.m. Pacific time. So if any of you knew him and want to participate, just
Makan Shore and I were on Sankirtan together in
really?
in Edmonton in the early
Oh,
80s. In Edmonton, yes.
Oh, nice.
Maybe you can give the link to Gora and he can post
I'll
it.
send. Yeah, I'll send the link to. I've already sent it to him,
All right.
so I'll have him forward it on to.
Okay.
Mukta.
Thank
All right.
you.
Thank you very much. Good
Thank
seeing you
you.
all. Have a good weekend.
Haribol.
Everybody on Monday. Manchakalpa, Trubias, Cha.
Kripa Sindhu Devicha, Patitanam
Patitanam
Bhavanebhyo, Srila Prabhupada ki.
Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Jai
Jai
Prabhupada.
Gaur Premanandi.
Hari
Hari
Bol.
Jai.